Did black people ever rule Egypt? The reason why I asked that question is because last year, Kevin Hart's Cairo, Egypt comedy show was canceled because he said essentially that there was a point in the past when there were black kings that ruled Egypt. Some of the Egyptians and some of the Arabic people who live in Egypt accused him of making Afrocentric statements. They accused him of trying to blackwash Egyptian history. Well, let me tell you unequivocally and unapologetically that there were clearly documented black pharaohs that ruled Egypt in the past. And let's begin with the 25th dynasty, which began in 747 BCE and existed until 656, that's 656 BCE. The first black pharaoh that we know that ruled in Egypt was Kush. Then there was Pi. His name also is sometimes called Pianke. Then there was Shabaka. And then, of course, the most famous black pharaoh was Taharka. Now, Taharka is mentioned in the Hebrew Bible in the book of Kings as well as in the book of Isaiah. So that's not debatable. That's clearly documented, and no Egyptologist that is credible disputes that. So when people say that there were no black pharaohs, either they are being deceptive or they are ignorant of their own history. And I think perhaps it's the latter, that they simply are responding emotionally because they themselves have not been taught their own history. But now when we get beyond the 25th dynasty and we start looking backwards in time, admittedly, who ruled Egypt is a complex story because due to its location right on the Mediterranean in the northeast corner of the continent of Africa, there were different empires that invaded and set up their emperors or their kings or whatever they want to call them, pharaohs, beginning with Assyria, which invaded Egypt on 2 separate occasions. And then, of course, we know about Rome and we know about the Greeks who invaded. So there were different pharaohs of different ethnic descents and origins at different times. But if we go all the way back to the beginning of the Egyptian dynasty, and I'm talking somewhere around 3000 BCE, before the first dynasty, Egypt was essentially 2 different empires. There was the Lower Egypt and the Upper Egypt, or Lower Kemet and Upper Kemet. But one king united them both, and that king's name is Narmer, sometimes referred to as Menes, for which the city of Memphis was named after. The city of Memphis in Egypt and the city of Memphis, Tennessee are both named after this individual, Narmer. But look at him. Folks, look at Narmer. Tell me whether or not you think that phenotypically, which means how he physically looks, does he not look like a black man? This is not a artist's rendering. This is the actual bust of the first pharaoh of Egypt. Well, let's talk about some other independent, objective evidence. We cannot escape the fact that the country of Egypt is located on the continent of Africa. Now, I say that because I want to go back to this campaign which led to Kevin Hart's concert being canceled. It was a hashtag. The hashtag says, Kevin Hart is not welcome in Egypt. And then the message, you aren't welcome to Egypt. Egyptians aren't Africans. We're the real builders of the civilization, no one else. The Afrocentric is just a lie. They are liars. Egypt is our land, not the Africans. Friends, my brothers and sisters, my beautiful, brilliant Egyptian and Arabic brothers and sisters who've contributed largely to the development of civilization, do you not know that Egypt is unfortunately or inconveniently located on the continent of Africa? So yes, 100%, no doubt, no dispute, you're African. Deal with it. But let me go on. Because maybe some of you would respond to what the Egyptians said about themselves. We cannot escape the fact that this word Egypt is not of Egyptian origin, in the sense of the people themselves that lived in the country did not refer to themselves as Egyptians. They did not refer to their country as Egypt. That is a term that the Greeks gave to the country. The people that lived there, according to the Rosetta Stone, referred to their land as KMT, which is Kemet. It stood for the land of the blacks. Now, some people, European Egyptologists, said, well, no, that's a reference to the soil. Well, let's see. You're on the continent of Africa, where black people come from, African people come from. The nation to the most immediate south of you, Kush, is completely black. The people to the west of you are black. But somehow, on this continent, you've managed not to be black. You managed not to be African. It doesn't make sense logically. It doesn't add up. But in addition, then, to them actually saying that they were black, and if we were simply to take their words at face value, we'd be satisfied. But they said something else. In their Book of the Dead, which is a very sacred text, answering a question about where they came from. And this is what they said. We came from the beginnings of the Nile, where the god Happy dwells at the foothills of the mountain of the moon. Now, we know today that they are describing a place that is in modern-day Uganda, Rwanda. It's on the border. It's a mountain range that's on the border of Uganda and Rwanda. Well, what do we know about those people in Uganda and Rwanda? Look at them. They are very black. So we have two statements from the Egyptians, from the ancient Egyptians would say, we're black. Land of the blacks, the black land, and we come from a place that we now know today to be a mountain range near and at the border between Rwanda and Uganda. Folks, I don't know if you were trying to get to the truth, why that wouldn't be enough. But let's say for purposes of this conversation, that's not enough and you need more information. Well, let's go on. Let's look at the biblical record. Now, if you believe that, if that is persuasive or convincing to you, let me point you to the table of nations in Genesis chapter 10, which discusses the sons of Noah. As you know, Noah had a son named Ham. That's how we pronounce it in the English, but actually in the original language is pronounced Kam or Cam, as in similar to Cam, as in Kemet, but Cam had 4 different sons. Kush, and by the way, that word Kush, that name Kush literally means black. Mizraim, which is the name that was given to the Egyptians in the Hebrew language. So we had Kush, we had Mizraim, we had Havilah, and we had Canaan. So if you look at an old map, and you look at a map that talks about where the land of Ham was, you'll see that it encompasses what we call Egypt and modern-day Sudan and even Ethiopia. It actually goes across the peninsula and it encompasses certain parts of Yemen and certain parts of Saudi Arabia. This is all referred to as the land of Ham or Ham, which we all know that Ham is another way of referring to blackness. We also know that Ham, who was black, had a son named Kush. His very name means black. Mizraim, which is also Kemet, which is also Egypt. The question logically is, biblically is, how could you have a black father and a black brother and not be black. If in fact you find the Bible persuasive, if in fact you find the Bible to be a credible source, then you've got to accept the fact that the original people of Kemet, who dwelled in the land of Canaan, were black. Maybe that's not enough. So let's go to the scientific record. Linguistic experts tell us that the first language family was the Afro-Asiatic language, and that it originated somewhere in East Africa. Paleoanthropological evidence also indicates that the first human beings lived in Africa. The genetic scientists also tell us, through their study of the DNA that they found in skeletons throughout Africa, that the first human beings lived somewhere in East Africa, and then 70,000 years ago began to migrate out of the continent. So all of the proof is this, that all human beings, first of all, are Africans. Some of us left, some of us stayed, but we are all related. If you believe the Bible, it tells us that simply, that we are all the descendants of Adam and Eve. We are all one big family.